guy who voted for Edwards, he just put it on the presidential
line,
line on the wrong line. I mean, you go back, there's some that have done it by mistake. The Dixie Crack guys who voted for Strom Thurmond, regardless of what South Carolina
That's
did.
like 48.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's the big one. But I think the real one that you fully have the evidence that it was truly a faithless investor, you got to go back to the John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and it's Samuel Miles. He swapped from. I can give you a list of all the.
When I was in 2000, one of the Democrat electors did not vote for the vice presidential candidate. Pretty sure. No, there's.
But that wasn't a switch vote. I have a list. I can share with you the list.
The lady from Minnesota didn't vote for John Edwards. Also.
And Lynn has a question. Didn't go back and look. They put the one at the top who had the most votes for the state. So I don't know if that would switch, like if your state, this is a procedural issue, but you have to think about sort of what message you're sending there, because maybe you got less votes in your state. You know what I'm saying? In terms of the votes are going to be crosswise. Right. They could be crosswise. That's your. They could. Yeah. And you'd be. I don't know how you. That's just the Secretary of State would determine how she wanted that to look.
My gut. I'm sorry. You're done.
Well, I just wanted to comment on what your comment was to what Professor Atkinson had said. You said we have to trust the other states right now.
Sure.
And I think the point that, I don't want to speak for you, but we really don't, in terms of awarding our electoral votes, we don't have to trust anybody else's process. We award our electoral votes based on what's going on here.
Right.
Now, does that mean that we may challenge or not trust other states? It's entirely possible. But in terms of process procedure right now, what the point she was making was, in order to award ours, we don't care what the other states are doing. All we care about is what we're doing.
And this leads to the point I was going to add on to it. Every year or a couple times a year, the National Association of Secretary of States get together in these beautiful, luxurious locations, and they work very hard. But I would imagine when the compact gets close to being done, or when it is done, this would be a major discussion. How certificates of ascertainment are going to be a streamlined way of sharing information and working together. Again, the Secretaries of States and the canvassing.
I have a feeling if we go this way, we're going to have to win it, because you're going to have national standards. You've got to have national standards.
For rules across states?
For the rules across state, because it's going to be such a mess, and this relates to the standing question I had before. If the states don't trust each other, you have the potential in a very close race for having legal wranglings just everywhere, in federal courts everywhere. And I think you're going to have problems with people. For example, we were talking about different processes, like whether you're going to let people who are standing in line vote or not. And so you're going to have questions about that. The hanging Chad questions, you can see that. And so I think it might be that we would have to end up with a commission, a federal election commission. And I happened to be there for the election of Fox, and it was interesting to see people go in and vote only for the president. That was just shocking and surprising to me.
Well, a lot of people do that now. If you look
People
at
do that now. I'm a presiding judge, and many people say, do I have to do this whole ballot back and front?
No,
They only vote.
Yeah, it's called the
I
drop-off.
know
We have an election of all of
election of
them.
everything, but it's just people, and as you know, in Mexico for many years, people didn't even bother because.
Right?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember.
This would say that they can't, right? My reading of this. Okay, I don't know.
I think,
Yeah.
Donna, I think it's kind of a cross point there. You can argue both ways that
This is it, yeah.
a national popular vote might conceivably inspire the public to vote and to feel their vote counted. But it could also, I think you could also argue that people within states might start to feel disenfranchised in that they might consider their area not to have the same voting power as the larger counties or areas or something. throwing that out there. I think you can argue that in both ways.
People like that now.
Right, I mean, this sort of addresses that. I don't think while there are differences across states in terms of election law, these are inherent to our federal structure. And according to the compact, they're not concerned then of chief election officials because they take whatever their final determination is as valid. I mean, that's the way the compact reads. So when they count the votes of all the states, they can't consider, well, they closed their polls too soon, or they let them stay open too long, or it wouldn't be, those would be things that, I guess the compact, so if it went to court, I don't know, I mean, a judge would look at the compact and say, well, that's not something you could look at, I guess. Possibly.
But
You never know what a
it's
judge is
a huge
gonna do.
issue because right now the states are electing 50 different sets of electors, and so it's valid based on those uniform rules within the state, which cannot be uniform among each individual equally protected voter. Now you're having all 50 states vote in one blob for president and vice president, and now you have enormous issues of whether or not you have equal protection of all the voters in terms of those things right there, registration rules. It's easy to see how a state would raise objections. Whoa, we just elected somebody based on rules that we ourselves do not adhere to.
Well, either the way they do it causes an equal protection problem or it does not, and that's not based on whether the compact exists. So it may very well be that some state is doing it in a manner that violates equal protection, but that has no relevancy to the existence of a compact or not. Putting the compact in place doesn't change how they're doing that.
It does.
But
It does. I mean, you're taking these as determinative all of these popular votes, these individual votes. It's one thing if you make your own decision about how your electors are going to be chosen, and you do that, and that's your business. But to make a determination that that's going to be done by states choosing with a majority of electors from all the states. Once you decide that all that goes away, it's going to be just a glob of popular votes, then the popular votes inherently must be determined. The eligibility must be determined. The vote counting must be one person, one vote. It must be equal protection for everybody. Every single component of that vote has to be equal, has to be fairly protected.
Except states are still the arbiters of their elections and they get to aggregate their votes, right?
It's a federal,
It's
yeah,
federal.
it's a basic tenet of federalism. Every state should be in charge of running and monitoring.
Yeah, but this is an anti-federalist. This is an anti-federalist procedure. This is a national procedure now, where all the votes are in one pot.
But every vote in every state will count under this. I mean, we can have this debate all day long. Yeah.
I mean, the point is the compact says you have to take their results regardless of what those differences are. So that's how the compact says, you know, it must happen. The states
That's
must.
very anti-federalist.
Okay, so we discussed that. So how do we know the results are accurate? So Article 3-8 deals with this. The chief election official of each member state shall immediately release to the public all vote counts or statement of votes as they are determined or attained. I thought this was a really important feature of the compact because it creates transparency and it also creates a check on the process since results are released by each member state. So you can compare member states' releases to the public about those results. You can compare them. There's a bit of transparency. We know how the vote total came about. Because there is no other person, there's no person in the Congress or the national government, the federal government, who counts all the votes. So it's the obligation of the member states to do so. So there's a transparency as a part of this to ensure that there's a check on the system, that we're releasing, these are the results we got, and we sum them together to come up with the national popular vote. Okay? So that's how we know that they're accurate. They actually have to release. Is that enough?
Is there a provision in the compact to expel a member?
Expel a member?
There's not. There's not.
That's a good reaction.
We're trying to get them in.
Trying to get them in. But you know what? There is an enforcement mechanism in the thing, because when you're talking about expelling someone, you're not living up to the terms of the compact. We want to throw you out. Well, under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, the impairments clause, no state can pass a law or do something to impair the obligation of contract. Courts, time and time again, and I believe Jim hit on this at the beginning, that compacts are viewed as contracts, and I'm not aware of any court that's ever allowed a state to do something in contravention of the terms of an existing compact. So not expel, but you can force them to live up to the terms.
I was going to say, on the contrary, the Supreme Court has stepped in and had decisions that enforced the provisions of an interstate compact.
What if you have a member who you thought that what they were submitting as their certified vote was not accurate repeatedly?
So you're saying that a member state was submitting certifications from the Secretary of State that another state believed and determined to be inaccurate?
Right.
Well, I don't, I mean, that's fraud. I mean, that's
fraud.
State laws would probably, I mean, that's falsifying an election. I mean, state laws would probably govern the ramifications there. I don't.
I think the member states.
You could have it.
I think the legislature of the state, I think the press of the state, I think the people of the state wouldn't stand for fraud. One thing above all, people want a system that works, and I don't think the people, the courts, the legislature would stand by for that. But it's a very good point, Grace.
Following up on his sort of procedural question, the way I understand it, the state legislature votes whether to participate into the compact or not.
Correct.
So I think we all know that state legislatures change in composition from time to time and leanings.
Right.
So you have a state that votes to become a member and goes through an election cycle, and then they have a new legislature, and I guess they have an opportunity to revisit that issue and
Absolutely.
decides to withdraw from the compact.
Absolutely, sure.
Does that create uncertainty?
What happens is to eliminate that uncertainty. But we want to preserve the vital state power to appoint electors as you want. You have a 6-month blackout every 4 years. You can't change the law. You can't either go in or go out within a 6-month window. July 20th of the election year to January 20th the following year.
Books closed.
It's closed. Books closed. You can't change the rules in the middle of the game. But that's the whole beauty of this compact. A state, pursuant to the terms of the compact, if it's not working out for that state for one reason or another, it's because this preserves the vital federal power, it preserves the elements of federalism, a state can get out.
The
But would
elasticity.
you have, I understand from a state's right
Based on
point
the
of view.
270.
From a state's right point of view,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
very
yeah.
important, but if your mission is to have a national popular vote, and you have a compact that meets the minimal requirements of the 270, and you go through a cycle, and then a large state like California or whoever withdraws, and you don't meet that
Right.
criteria, and then you don't have, then you revert back to the original intent of the
You can
electoral
revert
college.
back to the states, or the states can
So
do whatever they want.
potentially, you could go through an election cycle where a president was elected on a national popular vote.
Somebody
In his
withdraws.
initial,
Yeah.
and maybe his first run, and then his subsequent run, he may face a different type of election system, potentially, right? Just for clarification.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anything prevent you right now from enacting, from having the 45%, so what do you have? You have 150?
132 elected.
Does anything prevent you right now from having them enter into a compact and say, we're going to decide it this way?
Well, the terms of the compact, and the compact law, every state has to pass substantially the same language, and the compact we're having everybody get into is when it hit the triggering mechanism being 270. A state can do this on their own right now. Our compact, we don't want a state to go and jump by themselves. There is in order for this to be effective, we believe you need to actually make a difference and have 270, but nothing's to prevent a state from doing this on their own and saying, hey, look, we're going to base it on national popular vote, but we're not going to be part of the compact. You can do that.
Well,
It's a valid way.
they could create their own compact. They're just not part of this compact,
Sure, absolutely.
which would be very interesting.
So in the next 3 minutes, naming the winner.
Took you out, Rod.
The chief election official of each member state shall designate the presidential slate with the largest national popular vote total as the national popular vote winner. Article 3-3, the presidential certifying official of each member state shall certify the appointment in that official's own state of the elector slate nominated in that state in association with the national popular vote winner. So if there's a discrepancy, if the state goes